Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Gyanamurtim Dandvaititam Gaganasadrisham Tattvamashadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimlamachalam Sarvari Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tan Namami Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. We salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, life and death, pleasure and pain, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one as the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. May we through that grace go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. Om peace, peace, peace. For there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us, may Brahman sustain us, and may Brahman illumine our thinking process. May Brahman free us from fault finding and reveal to us the essence of the teachings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. We are appearing here now for our third class in this series of classes on the Niralamba Upanishad. And that is that which is without supports, because all around us, everywhere we see, everything has a support. Plants have the earth, and water has the clouds, and human beings have land, boats have water. Everything, there's an underlying foundation that supports it, that it gives it its presence, its appearance, we like to say in Vedanta. And so when we speak about something that is free of supports, then probably as deep as we can go, maybe as space, seems to be like it's infinite, right? Even the physical space is infinite. And therefore, it would be one of those things that we could look to that might be an example of how something exists without a foundation under it. But the Indian rishis know that as the opening sloka, peace chant to this Upanishad goes, that there are different kinds of space. So the physical space does have a support in the prana, space of prana, and those two have their support in the space of thought, mind, and that has its space in the space of intellect. And that intellect has a space in its foundation in the space of the self, that is the small self, the self of individuality. And then all of that rests in this Mahakasha, which is a word Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used for a space that is free from all supports, the Mahakasha. So you've got the Bhutakasha, where animals, plants, and human beings all share Burloka, they call it, Bhutakasha. And then you have the Pranakasha, and there's some other elemental beings that you don't see very often, maybe in your dreams. Or sometimes the yogis see them in their visions. And so that's called Pranakasha. And then the next kasha is Chittakasha, space of mind or thought. And then you have Gyanakasha, space of intelligence. And these get subtler and subtler and go back in, each one merging back into the next subtlemost before it. Just like ether, just like earth will go back into water, into fire, into air, into ether, because that's the way it came out. And that's the way it'll be taken back in when it's involving. But it's evolving, then it's come out that far to the element earth. So that would be a correlation to the Bhutakasha. Oh, it's become solid now. It's become a foundation for physical beings. But on the way out, maybe you didn't see, if you pay close attention in your dreams tonight, or coming out of deep sleep, if your consciousness is awakened in the third eye sense, then you may see that everything's starting to take on a denser and denser shape from a very subtle shape, from a very causal shape, and then from the great cause. Just studying the great cause today myself, Sri Ramakrishna said beautifully, is just imagine that a huge weight falling into an ocean, like was supposed to have happened on this one little planet. This fiery meteor just into the ocean and have waves would just rise for hundreds and thousands of feet in the air, and great sound of sizzling and burning matter into cold water and all the steam that comes off. I imagine what a spectacle that would be if you could be far enough from it to live through seeing it. So he said that that's like the great cause. That's like Om. When it hits matter, when it hits Prakriti, that's a good analogy for everything that's involved in intelligence, like in the Gyanakasha, to work its way out by stages to the Bhutakasha. And it'll come down in that series of fives, quintuplication it's called. And you can find that correlation with space, the five kinds of space, the five elements, the five senses, and the five sheaths of Vedanta. There's so many of those that try to explain how consciousness invests itself with matter or prakriti. And we're going to look at that today a little bit, how one of the questions in this Upanishad is, what is prakriti? So we might as well say that first. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hi. According to this translation, Om, that Brahman is infinite, and this universe is infinite. So taking the infinitude of the infinite, it remains as the infinite Brahman alone. Let there be peace in me, let there be peace in my environment, let there be peace in the forces that act upon me. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. One of the 7 peace chants that we've all memorized. All of you in this room have them all by memory, right? So Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam starts this Upanishad out. Of course, we did that 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago in our first Sunday class on this particular Upanishad, which may stretch forward for a few more classes, because we'll be taking a break because we're going on retreat in Rishikesh before too long. And that's coming up quickly, where we'll be studying about things like the great cause and how that a week with the word will spend, how that great, the great cause of everything, the word, works its way out from a grand thought into the thoughts of the human souls and the thoughts of intellectually brilliant people, and then on down. Again, 5 kinds, right? They're the thoughts of the rishis, and the thoughts of the gods, the thoughts of demigods, thoughts of the ancestors, thoughts of the humans. There you have another 5-fold evolution that's going on in conjunction with all, side by side with all these other 5s. And so they saw that so much in their deep meditations that they thought, there should be a way of putting this into 3 or 2-fold way of speaking about it. So you have many quintuplications, you have many triputis, and you have many dualities that are all there to express the one. If they're all there to express the one, then you're safe from the dangers inherent in multiplicity or in diversity. Just all keep it focused in on that one consciousness that's invisible. Leave that as your foundation, and know that that foundation is free of supports. It's Niralamba. So that's the one thing that escapes all description, and it escapes all form, name and form, escapes Maya, escapes time and space even. But unfortunately for us, it also quite efficiently escapes detection. So we have to be like Sherlock Holmes in a spiritual sense, and the game's afoot. And it's actually very symbolic, because the foot is what you need, the feet of the divine mother of the universe, or of the Ishvara or of your guru, your acharya, who will explain these things to you, causing you to remember them as he or she has. And that's what the first chart we're going to look at is all about. Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna's divine partner and wife, came to us along with Sri Ramakrishna's advent, and her children were the great souls like Swami Vivekananda, Swami Brahmananda, Swami Shivananda, Swami Turinanda. And some of those had birthdays last week. We were celebrating them. And today, actually, it's very close to Swami Vivekananda's lunar birthday. It's today, isn't it? Or is it Tuesday? Maybe it's Tuesday, yeah. So we're right on the cusp because Swami Vivekananda's two birthdays, solar and lunar, are both being observed by us here in SRV. So he's likened to that great Rishi who brings this kind of spiritual wisdom to us from age to age. I embody myself forth from age to age. So that's in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, the avatar of this age, and bringing his spiritual sons and daughters along with him. So it's good that whenever we take up a great Upanishad like the Niralamba Upanishad, we pay deference and stoke our memory up, the fires of our memory up in that regard. We are the children of immortal bliss, as the Upanishads say. Don't you know who we are? We are the precious spiritual children of Sri Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa. That you can stand up and be counted in, and then reap the benefits of that realization, that deep insight, and take your place among the knowers of Brahman. Upanishads tell you to do that. So Purnamada, Purnamidam, everything is infinite. But out here, it's the finite infinite. Inside, it's the infinite infinite. Out here, the supports are grosser. They're more obvious, although we're not finding that people are taking account of them in the philosophical sense. They're just saying gross matter, and I'm a materialist, and I want objects, and I believe objects are real, and they will fulfill me. And we know the run of thought that goes towards senses and their objects, if you want to put it very nicely. If you want to put it not so nicely, sensuality and materialism. And we know the ills and evils of that as they come into the human context. But we can look at it philosophically more and then see that the senses only need to be withdrawn from their objects because the senses want to know what supports them. So if you wanted to go with the train of thinking here, you say, well, what supports my outer senses? The objects don't do that because they're supported by earth, and the objects themselves are a manifestation of my five senses. But I have five subtle senses in dream tonight, which support the gross senses. The senses are called active senses, and then the senses are called knowledge senses. But then the subtle senses are called tanmatras. They're subtle particles, tanmatra. And that's where you're going to get this full philosophy step by step back inside of you, that you can use this information from the Niralamba Upanishad to meditate on the alambanas, because that's exactly what Father of Yoga did later for us. He took the 24 cosmic principles, told us to meditate on them one by one so that we could recount them, connect them, and use them as stepping stones out and in, and be masters of our own consciousness. Why shouldn't we be if it's our own consciousness, right? That should come to us as a great ability, spiritual ability, so that we're not just relying on materialism and senses only, as most of the world is doing. And they're being let down quite hard by doing that. But the devotees are always being lifted up. The worldly let down, the devotees lifted up. And that's how you can make a good distinction between people who are on the path and the people who haven't yet found it. Hopefully you can help them find it as we're trying to do here in SRV for the last 35 years. And as we come here and do our Sunday classes on this wisdom. So we've already taken up over the last two classes, what is Brahman? Who is God? Who is the living being in part? And then today we want to look at what is Prakriti and who is the Supreme Self? Also, what will get answered today that will make some headway, which we haven't made a lot of because those first three questions are quite diverse and dense. But who is Brahma? Who is Vishnu? Who is Shiva? And who is Indra? So we're talking about bringing in the anthropomorphical pantheon here now, is that we can just look at the particles of nature. We can look at the senses and their objects. We can look at everything material. And as we look at that, it's good to be able to use those as foundations. But as foundations for what? To know ourselves and to know that all of those things have come out of us. You are not born in nature. Nature is born from you, as we used to say it. That's a little known fact, little accepted fact in today's life, even by our so-called intellectuals and scientists and so forth, who are pretty much focused on matter. Need the savants in the university and so forth. That would bring them up with a start, and they would start probably complaining about that, like I've seen them doing to some of the Indian philosophers who are on the scene today, trying to present that idea that nature has really come out of you. First, you'd have to say, tussle a bit with conventional religion. No, in our tradition, no, God's not a creator. He doesn't create. It doesn't create would be a better way of saying it because it's beyond gender. So it's just pure and perfect, and let's leave it that way. And why is it that way? Because it's Niralambana, because it doesn't need supports. So you should meditate on it as supportless. What a novel idea, right? You're meditating on everything else, even Ishvara, as being a support or having a support. But when you get to Brahman, there you've gone beyond the beyond. Who said that? Lord Buddha. I've gone beyond. I've gone beyond the beyond. Who else said it? Sri Ramakrishna. God has form and God is formless. And God is beyond both form and formlessness as well. So this is revisiting what is Brahman. Now, very beautifully, we saw that distinction with the next question. Who is God? They say, what is Brahman? Because they're not assigning it a personality. But who is God? Oh, now you're talking about a personality. Is there a God? Yes, in India, there's a God called Ishvara. It's the sum total of all souls. It's the firstborn archetypical soul. It's the first being that comes into manifestation. We were calling it Prajapati even yesterday at satsang. This firstborn wise soul that will be a mind-born soul and will teach not only human beings, but will teach the gods too, their place in the pantheon. So it's a beautiful distinction. What is Brahman? Who is God? I'd like to bring that out. And like the way it was translated here. And who is the living being? We answered that in part last time, but we want to go on with that. When we talk about who is living being, who is God? I promised you last week that we would give a look at that via this chart, because this chart actually answers fairly well the next four questions all at once, and maybe five. So I'll leave the Rishi's answer to those questions till after we've conducted our study here. So let's take a look at Nirguna and Saguna Brahman, because we hear Sri Ramakrishna talking about, right at the top of this chart, this great cause. He says, do you know what God with form is like? Like bubbles rising out of an expanse of water, various divine forms are seen to rise out of the great akasha of consciousness. I just mentioned that, right? We called it the Mahakasha. It's beyond the Bhuta, Prana, Chitta, Jnana, and the Ananda, the Akashas of or in 5 in number. So now you have the Mahakasha, and he's calling it the great Akasha of consciousness here. The incarnation of God is one of these forms. The primal Shakti sports through the incarnation. So this is a very complete view that I would say not all Upanishads have given us. Not the Samkhya Yoga has not given us, and Yoga has not given us. Sri Ramakrishna gave it to us. And of course, in earlier avatars would come forth with it too, because even Chaitanya, recent avatar, worshipped Shakti. So that this bringing in of the divine Shakti is part of the point of this great chart in front of you, one of our old favorites. You can see the Divine Mother there in one of her very young pictures. And you can see basically in this chart a division of threefold, almost fourfold kinds. So if we want to answer the question there, then who is Ishvara? We're calling her Ishvari here. And we can see that she stands there at the very apex of formless reality and also overlaps into what's called formless dynamism. And that would be called Shakti power. That's what's causing my arm to rise right now. It's what's causing my lips to speak right now. What's causing me to form my thoughts right now. Because Brahman doesn't really have anything to do with that, except as a foundation for everything else. It itself has no foundation, doesn't need one, but it acts as a foundation for everything else through its Shakti power. That's called dynamic power. And so that needs to be included, and it gets included in the important admixture here as far as Sri Ramakrishna is concerned. The incarnation is Ishvara. We just said that, right? Who is God? That's Ishvara. Also appears as Ishvari in a female form. And then through her, that's the appearance of Shakti power, dynamic power, that will inundate everything with consciousness as it flows down and out all the way to the 5 elements here on earth. The quote by Sri Ramakrishna right next to her, the Jnani, through his discrimination, realizes that the ego and the universe are both illusory and perceives Brahman to be his own consciousness. So all forms will get soluble, become soluble into Brahman, Sri Ramakrishna used to say. He could say that because it was his own experience. That is, when he went into Samadhi, then formless Samadhi, then all things disappeared back into him. And when he came back out, he saw them appearing one by one from the causal to the subtle to the gross. And he said, avatars are like that. They move inside and from the gross to the subtle to the causal to the great cause. And then they move back out from the great cause to the causal to the subtle to the gross. That is, their consciousness is moving amongst these tattvas that are all supported by consciousness. It's all consciousness, really. It's Brahman moving amidst Brahman, or it's Nirguna Brahman taking on the form of Saguna Brahman and coming into form. We were talking about it in Tantra yesterday. You remember the word self-expression and self-limitation? It's called Tirodhana, right? And in Sanskrit, the Tantra says that if this didn't happen, then that wisdom wouldn't get manifested. So to have to put a form around something and squeeze it, see, down to the essence, and then beings will realize that that wisdom can get expressed through names, forms, in time and space, and lessons can be learned, wisdom can be realized, and one can then become one with Brahman easy if they do happen to make a sojourn in the fields of the Lord, as Jesus put it. Come out of that great cause and come down and out of the ladder of evolution. I must be able to turn and take those rungs back in. So those supports are there for that. And those beings are there to show us how to do it. That's how they got into a self-expression mode, Tirodhana. is they themselves allow themselves to be limited. Do I have to go down there? Yes, and you have to take a form. Remember, Lord Brahma said that to his mind-born child, Vashishta. You have to go down to earth, so I want to put you in a state of Maya. Put him in a state of Maya, and he was suffering so much. And then he came out, Lord Brahma lifted the state of Maya, and Vashishta said, what did you do to me? That I let you know what Maya is like, because you have to have an incarnation on earth. That's where people are suffering, this experience of Maya. Suffering and not without knowing why they're suffering. So you must go down there and you must find those people who are open to the truth and give it to them, as happens every age through these great beings. So if you want, you can talk about wisdom as being non-dual and so forth, but you probably should be able to lend it to the fact that the reason they do that is to help people escape that suffering. And number two, they do it from the foundation of willing self limitation. I will take this self on. I will leave my ocean of Brahman and I'll just become a wave in it. From the wave, I'll become a lake. From the lake, I'll become a river. From the river, I'll become a jug of water. A jug of water, I'll become a glass, and then I'll become a thimbleful. See, and limit myself down in consciousness, all the while remembering that the essence is water, not the form. So this is what the Jnani does, he says, in this discrimination process. The next layer of this is formless dynamism. This is pure intelligence, as it says on the right-hand side of the chart. It's also called Turiya, which is beyond it's the fourth state beyond the three states of consciousness, called waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. So if you look down from Turiya into the next subdivision, you see deep sleep state, where Saguna Brahman is prominent. And then after that, visionary state, you see the Trinity appears. And then dreaming state, you see the subtle forms, like Indra, the god, appears. He says, what is Indra? You see in this sixth or seventh question. And then after that, it's into the waking state. So these are very important to explaining consciousness amongst the alambanas, or amongst Prakriti, how Purusha uses Prakriti, and not only in terms of matter, but in terms of their consciousness, you see, their intelligence. So this pertains to that. So that's evolution. Evolution would go from waking state back to dreaming state to deep sleep state. I'm a mischievous philosopher, so I added another one. A visionary state, I think, happens just before you go into deep sleep state. And when you come out of deep sleep state and start to dream again, that's where you have these visions of great souls, or maybe visitations from your ancestors even, things like that. So deep sleep state back into Turiya, which just means the fourth, and you can see how all of this is from causeless to the great cause, to the cause, to the subtle cause, to the gross cause. If you look at the other side and march down the chart, you can see basically, as far as attributes are concerned, in Nirguna Brahman there are none. So it says there, gunas are transcended. Gunas are tamas, rajas, and sattva. That is heaviness, either whether you speak of it as in terms of science, or we speak it in terms of psychology, then it's a kind of heaviness of matter, or on the other hand, psychology is a heaviness of mind. So science and psychology in the West need to get together about this and consult India. And then they'll be able to determine the waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and beyond state of consciousness. And they'll also begin to let themselves in on the great secret of the gunas, because only Vedanta talks about the gunas in India, and Lord Kapila and Samkhya all the way back. So this is a very important thing. So guna-wise, they're transcended here So you're not inhibited by them. But in formless dynamism, they become potential. They're still in abeyance. That is, she hasn't begun to animate them yet. She hasn't begun to move everything. It's a formless dynamism. And then if you come down to the Saguna Brahman state where, oh, all of a sudden we're going to have Brahman take on forms, as it were. Consciousness is going to infuse forms. Then you come to this sattva becomes predominant. Om is right there. The great cause. The word is right there. Vibrating like a great weight that just fell into a huge ocean, right? Fiery meteor just went kapoosh, like it happened once on this planet, evidently. And so you see that there's this riot of waves going everywhere and all this activity. So that's the power of Om. A good meditation to have for the beginning of things. Everything was waveless, and all of a sudden Om hit Prakriti, and it burst into so much activity. And that activity is called tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. That's just how to put it. So it's that way in nature, it's also that way in the mind. So here it's predominant, that is, balance is predominant. And that's called Saguna Brahman at its highest state. There, the Svetasvatara Upanishad gives us a clue. Higher than the personal God is the infinite supreme Brahman, who is concealed in all beings according to their bodies, and who, though remaining single, envelops the whole universe. Knowing that to be the Lord, one becomes immortal. That's what the Mandukya Upanishad says too about the pragya state, deep sleep. That's the Lord you're looking at. Ishvara and pragya go together. That's his realm. So then that's the Lord of all beings. The Upanishad says there at the deep sleep state. So there's something very powerful then. If you're meditating and you manage to diminish your thoughts, which is one of the things they're trying to get you to do, then you're going to go into a kind of deep sleep of meditation, a nirbija state where there's no seeds. And that's where you'll have this vision of Ishvara. So Ishvara gets covered and you can't see God. That is the question, who is God? We're not talking about yet what is Brahman. We're talking about who is God. I want to try and use that as a doorway into Brahman. From form to formlessness, that's called nirvana, that's called sampragata, it's called nirvikalpa, it's called satori, that highest experience. But through Ishvara is how you pass into that. So you're going to have your mind very, very equalized, very content, and that's called sattva. So people can't get to God because they have restless minds, if you want to put it simply, or they have dull, depressed minds. And they're praying to God with dull, depressed minds because they're suffering. And they're praying to God for wealth and things when they have restless minds. And not very many people are getting into sattva and saying, oh Lord, this is nice here, but is there better? Can you take me beyond all of this pleasure, this subtle pleasure that's here in sattva? And that's a true lover of God, Sri Ramakrishna says. So it's a very diverse chart, has a lot in it. So I'm taking you from the top down generally, but then we're going to the sidebars. The sidebar, if you come down to the Trinity, they're talking about where Rajas becomes more predominant. There's activity there. That doesn't mean Rajas and the Trinity are all restless beings. They're all supremely balanced beings, but they represent each guna. Brahma has restlessness of a divine nature because he creates, right? Vishnu has sattva of a divine nature because he preserves. Shiva has destruction and dissolution in his mind of a tamasic nature, a divine tamasic nature, because he dissolves everything at the end of a cycle. And he's also at work in your waking, dreaming, deep sleep, turiya, back to waking state, back to deep sleep, dreaming, waking state. In that cycle, those Trinity are at work, and helping, ushering the soul from those into those three states of consciousness. That's why they're put across the board here. Why I make charts that cry and connect and across the board these kinds of teachings that you find sort of spread around the Vedas, Upanishad, Gita, and sutras and so forth. So to make these connections is very good, but you wouldn't then make a conclusion that the Trinity is Rajasic in that way. It's basically, this is the level where Rajas predominates because there's a lot of activity that wasn't there up here. It's still held back in abeyance. Study the 4 stages of the word with me in Rishikesh. In 3 weeks, you'll understand that better. Everyone come with me to Rishikesh, where Vedavyas taught 60,000 people the Vedanta not too long ago. And we're going to be right there doing the same. The quote there is from Sri Ramakrishna. The Bhakta feels that God is one entity and the world is another. Therefore, God reveals himself to him as a person. So this is also a great reconciliation. And it's a great boon, too, that when things get active, things can also not only become slothful and heavy, weighty with tamas, but there can also be a lot of karma developed inside of a restless mind. So the bhakta has an advantage there, as they see God as a person. And so at that level, their alambana is the Trinity. Right? That's why we are all meditating on an ishtam. All of us are. And in India, they have many more ishtams that they can choose from. And in the West, we don't have many, so we have to kind of borrow them. But if you do take to this deeper, more profound Indian wisdom, then you come to understand that Ishvara is the sum total of all souls, quote, unquote, Vivekananda, and that you have this ideal and form that you can go to. Talk about your support. That's going to be the great support for all people. This is the Lord. This is the Lord. This is the Lord of all beings. So the Bhakta feels that, but don't forget how the Jnani feels. The Jnani and the Bhakta are seeking the same thing, only with two different yogas. One's called Bhakti Yoga, the other's called Jnana Yoga. So you can see that both of them are going to be intersecting with each other, and beings are going to, according to the temperament, being having access to both of them. An interesting thing here, because we said pure intelligence existed here, is the curtain of nescience. I have a whole separate chart on that I would usually bring out at this point. But as we're working our way through these 5 or 6 questions I'm taking on at once here today, we have to look at this curtain of nescience is spreading itself from the deep sleep state all the way into the state of dynamism of Shakti. And so penetrating through that's going to be a rather difficult thing. You can see here that there are these white lines that draw a distinction between all of these. This in Kundalini, and this could have been placed on the chart if there was more room, you'd call that Brahma Granthi, Vishnu Granthi, and Rudra Granthi. In other words, there are these divisions that consciousness is trying to pierce through as it awakens. And that's put in a way about Granthi really means knot or veil. There's certain veils that the soul is going to want to penetrate through with the help of Ishvara, which would be with the mantra, right? Or with the help of the guru, which would be the wisdom that the guru gives. So the bhakta is going to take mostly to Ishvara and that path of japa. And the Gyan is going to take more to the guru and the path of wisdom. And if you have both, then we just put our hands together for you. You're sure to reach the goal. Curtain of nescience then is something to be looked at and kept in consideration. It answers the question, why do people not see God? And why does God not answer our prayers? Is there a God or isn't there a God? Which is coming up here as questions. Um, so if you say, oh, curtain of nescience, 3 words answers it. But then you're going to have to go find out what nescience means. It's kind of the opposite of intelligence up here. But see how they go hand in hand with each other, and they bisect or overlap these levels of Saguna Brahman and what we're coming up to now here, which is the question that we're also asking here, number 4, what is Prakriti? So you can see now pretty much this chart is talking about, who is Ishvara? What is Brahman? Who is Ishvara? And then who is God, it really said, and who is the living being and what is Prakriti? So that's now beginning to be answered. You can see here the Trinity is the last vestiges of Ishvara. You see here, the Trinity it's called, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who maintain projection, sustenance, and withdrawal in cycles. They're also called a Trimurti. See, so they're the triple form of God at the highest level of form, and invested and animated by the Mahashakti and her divine power. Now, and we also said that that's where Rajas was predominant. Where does tamas start to kick in? And that would be, of course, at the level of gross matter. Everything here is vibrating at a very, very heavy. That as far as thought's concerned, it's solidified here. Objects are just thought made concretized. So thought has been the support for objects, and now it's letting objects go, and they're just coming together in the 4th stage of the word called Vaikari, and objects are now beginning to appear. And people see these objects from a disembodied state, and they want them. These objects are called worlds. They're called food. They're called everything that happens in nature. So that's why they're asking these questions, and they get deeper and deeper into the potential problem of matter and how it can bewitch people, hypnotize them. Like Sri Ramakrishna saying, they all come here to the garden with wide eyes, but they don't ever go to try and find the gardener who projected through the Trinity this beautiful garden. Whoever wants to find the creator of the garden. So in that way, this is kind of a dream, and it begins, you're leaving a visionary state, which is of a higher level, and you're entering into a kind of dream, which is heaven-like. And then from that, you're falling into a waking state where even your ancestors are distant from you. And if you do that, you can see in the dreaming state is called subtle form. If you see up here, this was called causal form. And if you see up here, it was formless dynamism. So there's another 4-fold level of things going on there. There's the 4th there in the middle, gross form. See, so gross, subtle, causal, and formless dynamism, and of course, formlessness itself with a capital F. So that's another designation on this chart that helps us understand how consciousness is coming out and getting more and more dimmed down and limited down into forms. And again, that can be an opportunity for the soul to understand higher truths if it's done by Ishvara itself, if it's done by the great seers. and the gurus and the acharyas and so forth. That can be a great opportunity because now it's in form and I can actually ask it what the hell's going on here. And he or she can explain to me all these different ways of how I got here and how I can get out, how I can move back, how I can be released. In India, that's the only religion that asks that. How do I get released from all this? That's called mukti and moksha. As far as subtle form goes, the best way to put it in a simple way is that it's got the individual. Well, let's go from the causal first. It's got the collective mind, cosmic mind under it, right? The Trimurti, the Mahat is right there. Trimurti, and I was talking to a man in prison, just can't get the Mahat, can't understand the Mahat. He's been at it for a year. So he asks me every time, can you please tell me what the Mahat is? And so I've been telling him about how the Trimurti, the Trinity, uses as a mind just like we do. And so it will use this great mind called the Mahat. And this is how it uses it, because out of it will come all of this vibration that started here with Om, the great cause. And then there's the causeless cause, of course. But now we're talking about something that happens from Om on out, from the word on out to its manifestation. Again, in 4 phases that aren't listed here, but they have their own chart. Now, basically, cosmic mind is going to be that Mahat that is going to be the collective minds that the support of the collective mind. That's listed here. And that's going to be your gods, your demigods, your asuras, they call them, your pitris, they call them, and the elementals, and then all the way down to the human, the plants and the animals. This is all falling into place as Om vibrates, as the original intelligence in Om vibrates grosser and grosser and grosser. Don't worry, you can gain it back by meditating on Om. Sri Ramakrishna, I was reading that the other day in the Gospel. It says, well, do we need a guide and all that? And he says, yes, you can say Om Rama, he says, Om Ram, Om Ram, Om Ram. But you can just say Om too. It doesn't need anything else. So both Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna said that word Om. You know, if you meditate on it correctly with that kind of understanding or comprehension, then it will dawn upon you. It's not the right word. It will sound for you. See, because dawn would be light. I see the light inside, but this is a sound. And this is called Shabda Brahman, path of vibration or sound. And it's side by side with the path of Jyoti or light. So some people who are more visionary, they'll see the light, you see. Other people who are more formlessly oriented, they'll hear the sound of Om. And Sri Ramakrishna said it, actually, I saw that in the Gospel a couple of weeks ago. It said, they'll first think it's happening here at the navel, but then they'll understand it's happening at the crown chakra. So he's talking about how Om, when they first detected is pretty much here at this level of form. I feel it in my gut. It's like I feel it in my vital energy because prana connects to psychic prana, and then that connects to Om. Or I'd probably better said connects to Shakti, and Shakti has Om under her purvey, you see, just like this. She's the mother of the word. We know that about her. The Vak Devi, she's called. So add in the third there is the individual mind, and then you start to see how a very important Trimurti, there's the Trimurti, very important Tripurti happens when the mind divides into 3 things. From the cosmic to the collective to the individual. It's good to know that, but you can assign living beings in higher heavens, lower heavens, and earth to those 3 kinds of minds. So what kind of mind do you come into the body with? Is an important question. Or how can, with you come to me with a mind that's influenced too much by tamas, how can we get you active so you can have rajas? And then how can we get you balanced so you can have sattva? Because as your mind follows inward, this triputi, inward to sattva, then pretty much the whole game that was afoot is not afoot anymore. It's the Lord's feet. And it becomes so deep and so powerful that you'll see the light or you'll hear the sound. And then Sri Ramakrishna said, the person who does that says, quote, oh, what is that? What is that? They're completely dumbstruck and stunned. Sthiti samadhi, that's called, by having their first real up-close personal account with the light or with the sound. And they'll want that again. Sri Ramakrishna said, farmer had some aches and pains. Doctor gave him some little opium pills. Bless you. And so the opium pill, he'd take one every day and help the aches and pains, right? So he was out in the barnyard, popped open the cap there, took an opium pill, one little blue opium pill fell down out of the bottom bottle into the dirt. He didn't see it, so he capped the bottle and walked away. But the peacock saw it. It looked like him. It was colored like him. So basically, the peacock went over there after the farmer left and found that opium pill and gobbled it up and had a very nice day. Big smiley face on that peacock, because that's a small body with a pretty good dose of opium for a farmer's body. So basically, the whole point of the story is that when the farmer came back the next morning, the peacock came over there. And every time the farmer came out in the yard, the peacock came running. So, say, well, that's an addiction, right? But Sri Ramakrishna and the Avatar, they use these potentially negative teachings or mixed teachings to say that the peacock is the devotee of the Lord. And if he once gets a taste of that so-called opium of bliss that comes from seeing the light or hearing the sound of the Lord, of God, of Ishvara, of Brahman, then they'll come back again and again for it. Isn't that a beautiful story? And pertains very well here. Simple stories like that from all the avatars clarify things for us. So 3 kinds of mind. And when you have 3 kinds of mind, then you can have these different kinds of space, these different levels, periods of time. The mind will provide for space and time, which, in dream, you can prove it to yourself, right? Well, how long was I sleeping? I don't know. When did I dream what? How long did that dream last? Don't ask me. Time just gets stretched and pretty soon disappears. And so does space. Heaven goes away to higher heaven. Higher heaven goes away into that formless light. And so all of consciousness is experiencing this inner movement to subtler, to causal, to great cause. All the time we're having this. So we just want to wake up and do it all consciously. Say, you might come out of your room one day and say, how did you sleep? Oh, I was up there with the great cause. It was so beautiful. See? All you need to do is really acknowledge it, that you've been there. It's not that you haven't been there, and it's not that you have to attain it. That's what's happening. That's what this all is. The Mandukya Upanishad says, all of this is Om. Everything that's here has come out of Om. And everything that has come from is also Om. Gaudapada took that apart in his Karika nicely. And so that you won't be guilty of a cliche if you say that. All is Om. So in that way, then, the triple mind of cosmic, collective, and individual is still aware of Om, and its thoughts are manufacturing the worlds. As we said, you are not born in nature. Nature is born out of you. So you have to have somewhere to come to. So you're going to manifest that for yourself, they say sometimes. Another story, Sri Ramakrishna, in the country, there's a mansion owned by a rich man. a zemindar. He said, zemindar is a nice word, right? And so the people of the village walk by that mansion all the time. It's empty. All of a sudden, one day they walk by the mansion and there's lots of activity there. Trucks are pulling up, carts are pulling up, workers are coming there. You see people mopping the windows inside and cleaning the floors and trimming. You see gardeners trimming. So they all know in their head, oh, the zemindar is coming to the mansion. His once-time visit, vacation, right? And so this is how Sri Ramakrishna explains the appearance of God in the human context. So all of a sudden, things will start happening to that human being. They'll be lit up by Shakti, by Divine Mother. They'll be going to hear lectures and talks about it. They'll have great interest in it. People will start be attracted to them. Not very many in this age, but some. And so forth and so on. So this is how the appearance of Shakti in things, or the sounding of Om in both the Purusha and in Prakriti combined, cause this awareness to spread around all things. Like it will spread through these senses and emotions. See, there you see what we mentioned earlier at class. Hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling. And speaking, acting, moving, procreation, and excretion are these two sets of fives that are called the senses / emotions. There's the world right, and of course in the middle of it. On the other side, as remember, this is now gross form we're talking about, and it's being experienced more by the individual and collective minds. Unfortunately, the cosmic mind is a little bit too far a cry, distant a cry for most people to go to. But if they know that they're going to church and worshiping Jesus, if they're going to a temple and meditating on Buddha, if they're going into the Kaaba to circumambulate and worship Muhammad and so forth and so on, that this is all what's happening. The cosmic mind is there in all those things. Cosmic mind has taken a form and is showing itself through all of this. This is how they get to all this is Brahman in Vedanta. On the other side, then, you see audibility, tangibility, visibility, flavor, and odor. Audibility would go with what? Hearing. Let's see. Tangibility would go with what? Feeling. Visibility would go with seeing. Flavor would go with tasting. Odor would go with smelling. So these are all, hand in glove with each other. And they manifest themselves from the causal to the subtle to the gross, and then they return. And this happens when you go from waking dreaming to deep sleep too. The objects here, the smells and all that, the sounds, music and all that, just turn and go in and become the tanmatras and the subtle senses inside of you. And you're still smelling and touching and tasting in a dream. You're still seeing in a dream different objects, but they're just in their subtle form. So Om has become less gross. It's become more subtle now, until you can make it more subtle by taking it back to its source and become one with it. And then Om will be like that all-pervasive humming that they talk about, that permeates everything. And I've often said, if you come out of deep sleep straight to waking and you're not dreaming that particular night, is that when you wake up the first few seconds, you'll remember that something was really humming loud. It was just vibrating. As soon as you opened your eyes, it went like it disappeared, because it couldn't be here with your senses. They weren't, your consciousness now manned the gross senses, and Om disappeared just like that. So you're going to have to go back into dream, see the manifestations of Om, then go into deep sleep and hear it take you over again. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, walking toward the ocean over sand dunes, right? First, the sound's far away. You get closer to the ocean, you can't see it, but there it is, still sounding more. Finally, you go over the last sound dune, and there it is in all its beauty, all the waves, all the rushing sounds there. He's talking about going back in those three states of awareness, and back to Om, from gross senses to subtle senses to intelligence, the mind, where this Om is just the king of everything, but it became less known as it came down, and its intelligence helped the collective mind, the cosmic mind, the collective mind, to fashion everything, and then help the individual mind to enjoy it, hopefully with exquisite enjoyment. Well, we can't leave out the Pancha Mahabhutas, can we? It's the very last thing we come to as we came from Brahman down to the element earth in many of these ways. So basically, ether will go with hearing, and then air will go with feeling. Can't have feeling without air. You can't see without fire. You can't taste without water, and you can't smell without earth, you see. So all of these 20, I have a chart that puts them straight across the board within in 4 columns. So you can see how they're all just connected. But when you're talking about the 5 elements, it's on a very um, coagulated, see, gross sense. Everything's solidified, almost solidified here. And if you talk about the subtle mind and dream, then everything has become more diffused, and you can't quite bring it together. There's more light, more space in it. There's more space between the atoms of thought and dreaming. And deep sleep, they all go away, and it becomes empty and all pervasive, so that you can just rest in it. That's called pragya. It's called cognition and Vedanta. And unfortunately for most people, they don't have any cognition in deep sleep. That is, they don't remember. You ask them, how was your deep sleep last night? They're puzzled. Oh, I mean when you weren't waking and you weren't dreaming, how was that for you? They scratch their heads. Well, I don't know how it was. All I know is that I slept well and I feel great. But you can dream yourself ragged and nightmare yourself to death. And you can also do that right here on earth. You can be peaceful, or you can be sattvic, or you can be rajasic, or you can be tamasic. That's the choice that the individual mind has. So it has to invest itself. Our way of investing itself is with this wisdom, answering these kind of questions, Atma Vichara. So I knew that this chart would take a long time. We haven't looked at it for a long time, but it would also answer how many questions in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions in one chart. That is, who is the living being? Find them down here, right? Who is Prakriti? What is Prakriti? That's all of this. Elements. I mean, water, fire, air, earth, and ether, that goes a long way here. You can't go anywhere and not find the 5 elements. Air is all around you, and you're moving through ether. So, as you just say, the Pancha Mahabhutas, the Rishis go, oh, you mean the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements? You're not just talking about something I can enjoy, something I can ravage, something that I can steal from others' resources, something I can pollute with my thoughtless mind and my insensitive actions. Not those 5 elements. We're talking about Pancha Mahabhutas, who started up here in a thought form and came out of purity and showed their beauty to you right here when you were born, and nurtured you, succored you. So that's what Prakriti is all about. And then who is the Supreme Self? We'll look at that. Who is Brahma, who is Vishnu, who is Rudra, and who is Indra? They're all right here. Indra was presiding over all this. The Trinity was presiding over him and his female counterpart called Indrani. And then from that, it all merged back into Om. These 3 beings will turn and face Om when they give up their causal bodies at the end of an age. And three other great souls will come along and take up the duties of the Trimurti. They'll merge back into Brahman through Om. Let's see then what the Rishi of this Upanishad says about what is Prakriti, who is the Supreme Self, who is Brahma, who is Vishnu, who is Rudra, and who is Indra, now that we've taken one chart and availed ourselves of our own answers. So that starts at, let's start at sloka 4 and repeat that. God is the veritable Brahman that, depending on its power called Prakriti, creates the worlds and enters into them as the inner controller. It controls Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. It is Ishvara. And controls the intellect and the sense organs too. So this Rishi gives a pretty thorough two-sentence definition of what Ishvara is. What's the living being then? Oh, you mean the jiva? Is he who through false superposition thinks I am gross because I have a name and a form. And thinks I must worship Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The word for Shiva here is Ishana. And Indra too. I must worship the gods. That was all part of India's integral approach to all of this. And the jiva thinks, though I am one, due to the differences and causes that originate the body, the jivas are many. Then what is Prakriti? Prakriti is but the power of Brahman. It is intellectual in nature and competent to create the variegated and marvelous world from the matrix of Om. So everything here is filled with intelligence. That was what caused everything to shine, was this intelligence that started back here, that out of Om, like Vivekananda is saying. Intelligence was the first thing out the gate. This is the gate. His first thing out the gate was intelligence. He said, it may be a compound because it's not consciousness without intelligence, without support. So Brahman can't have intelligence as its support. Intelligence has Brahman as its support. Just like nature, we support nature. Nature doesn't support us, not as far as origins go. We're first. And soul is first, matter comes second. Purusha first, Prakriti comes then. And we don't want to mix that up. So in that way, Prakriti is but the power of Brahman. It's intellectual in nature because it comes from intelligence and it ends up here as intelligence. And intelligent people will study it. Hopefully they're more intelligent not to get bound by it, but they will nonetheless see it here. And what is the Supreme Self? And we'll spend the rest of the class on this one. The Supreme Self is Brahman. This Upanishad is actually, if you look it up, it's known for 41 questions with one answer. It's all Brahman. So Vedanta never shies away from that. But that can sound cliche-like. You say, oh, it's all Brahman. And people will say, oh, yeah, it's all Brahman. So here, give me that cigar, and I'll smoke it. And give me that 2 pints of ice cream. I'll eat it all at once. They'll just use it. Oh, it's Brahman. It's okay. So that discrimination called intelligence has to be there, right? And then if it is, then you can say that and really know what you mean and mean what you say. So the Supreme Self is Brahman alone, being altogether different from body and Prakriti. So, yeah. So, shake it, and then it mixes, let it sit there for a while, and it comes apart. See, oil and water don't mix. So in that way, Purusha and Prakriti, they don't mix for very long. When you do the process of discrimination, This is not the self. This is not the self. This is not the self. Sorry, Lord Indra, the gods, heavens, they're not the self either. I'm going deeper. The Trinity says, you come to Lord Brahma, as the Upanishad says. What a great creation with that intelligence of the word that you projected. That's beautiful. Can I go beyond it now? So if Lord Brahma sees a soul like that, then he lets them through the gate. See, and then that's when you see the light, hear the sound, and see your ishtam about there. Have that visionary state, right? And then up you go into the realm of the Mahashakti. Divine Mother herself takes you in her blessed hands. See, O thou most beautiful, whose holy hands hold pleasure and hold pain, doer of good, who art thou? The waters of existence by thee are whirled and tossed in mighty waves. Is it, O Mother, to restore this universe's broken harmony that thou, without cessation, art at work? Beautiful. One line, one verse of Swami Vivekananda's beautiful stotram called Amba Stotram. I've got that in Sanskrit and with music now that I'm going to sing at the retreat for us. So basically, that's a very fine and complete answer to Prakriti leading into who's the Supreme Self. Oh, well, you're talking about something that's not the body, that's not earth, air, fire, water, and ether. It's not hearing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling. It can't be divided into 5 things. No matter how subtle those 5 things become, like the Tanmatras, it's beyond the individual collective mind. The cosmic mind just can barely manage to see it. That's the Supreme Self in all. That is Brahman. That's Atman. That's what the jiva really is. So they gave us the answer to what the jiva is. Oh, it's the one who, through wrong thinking, says, I'm gross, and I have a name and a form, and I have to worship Indra and go to heaven and so forth. That's the jiva. So are you a jiva or are you Atman? See? Well, can I be jiva-Atman? Yeah, that's allowable. But you want the Paramatman. So you want to know that you're one with that. I and my Father are one. It's a great realization. And no matter what religion you put that in. And our religion is Tattvamasi, that thou art. That Tat means Brahman. So that's a very beautiful statements. So in the remaining time, now that we've separated the wheat from the chaff, and we know that Purusha and Prakriti only have a relationship and then separate themselves naturally when the involution happens, let's then go to answer more fully in our own way this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, this 5th of the 9 questions that we've answered today. That's who is the Supreme Self. Let's look at that with a different chart. And so Gaudapada in his Karika takes this stance when he's, as it were, he has to take up, who are these beings around me? I mean, my student is Govindapada. He was like this famous realized sage who later on became, whose earlier birth was Patanjali, the Lord of Yoga, was Gaudapada's student some, 400 or 500 years later than when the father of yoga was in the body. I mean, it's hard to say, but 140 AD for father of yoga. Some people say 200 BC. So there's a difference of about 300 years there, but it's kind of immaterial. Basically, he was born in that period to systematize the Ashtanga yoga, put it into 8s. And then Gaudapada comes along around 600 AD, which is at least 500 to 700 years later. And he's got the father of yoga as his student, Govindapada. And guess who was Govindapada's student later in 700 AD? Shankara, the great Advaita Shankara. So Gaudapada, Govindapada, and Shankara, that Advaitic line, who at the same time were um, Samayachara Tantrasists. They worship Shiva. And they also loved the Divine Mother, wrote hymns to Divine Mother. Gaudapada wrote a whole scripture on Divine Mother. And we know him for the Karaka, but he wrote a scripture on Divine Mother. So we have to know that the Shakti Advaita has been around for a while in the minds of great beings, that some of them haven't overlooked Shakti. They've worshipped her, even in a non-dual sense. So this chart I want to show you then to wrap up our third class here is Gaudapada's reckoning of false assumptions about what the self is. So we just heard right here from the Rishi in the Upanishad here, Niralamba Upanishad, that the jiva thinks, all superstition, I'm a body, thinks I'm nature, I'm made of nature, and I have some other gods that I have to worship, I have to go to heaven, that's my business, and so forth. At least they thought that way in India, that they had to get to heaven for a while. Then they wanted you to get beyond the heaven-aspiring senses, so they realized something deeper because of great teachings like this coming to them. But in this case, Gaudapada is saying much the same thing. Oh, you think you're a jiva, huh? You think you're nature, huh? You think you're a body. Yeah, a lot of people think that way. Let me explain it to you. So he says here, there is no limit to the mind's imaginings. Anybody know the word for that in Sanskrit? Sankalpa, thank you. Different people, so long as they have not acquired the proper knowledge, indulge in the pastime of describing the Paramatman in various ways. Atman is imagined to be prana. That's not a hard one. That's an easily forgivable one. The prana is this almost like the spirit itself. So it's, but they're imagining Brahman is that. And other innumerable entities. This is the maya of the Atman, by which even Atman itself becomes deluded. So if you want a question of why people are the Atman here, but they don't know it, Gaudapada is trying to answer that Brahman has its maya, and sometimes it can even veil truth from it. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that Brahman weeps caught in the web of his own maya. It's a straight statement. So this is like very difficult to understand, and it's indiscernible, really. But great beings are still, if you want to put it tantrically, they have tirodhana, right? They have taken on self-limitation to help us. I mean, this is another way of mentioning yesterday at satsangs. It's another way of explaining vicarious atonement of Jesus in Christianity is through tirodhana. So Jiva took on a limitation, became a body, and some of that is known in Christianity. He was the Word made manifest, and so forth. That sounds pretty in conjunction with what we think in India, in part at least. So basically, that's to be looked at. But this maya of the Atman, then this tirodhana, this limitation, self-limitation, in order to express higher wisdom, has to be done by a Jesus or by a Buddha or by a Gaudapada. And when they do it, look what comes forth. Oh, like I said, you think you're nature, do you? You think you're a body. Well, a lot of people think that. This Atman, which is none of that, is taken to be merit and demerit by religionists. I'll go through each one of these. I'll try not to comment too long on them, but basically, morality and immorality, virtue and vice apply there. There's so many people caught in that duality. So they're never going to know universal love. They're never going to know universal religion because they're caught thinking that the Atman is measured by merit and demerit. It has nothing to do with that duality. It's beyond that. Nobody ever quite thinks that. They want to trap it inside of that. That's called a conventional religion. You can see so much evidence of that all around the world, especially today. Talk about self-limitation. How about in religion? The religions fall so low that you can see the truth now. You see, if you have intelligence, when the religions give out, you're not depending upon the mess they're making. of God's pathways. That, oh, well, I don't need that anymore. I see the truth now. Thanks for getting out of the way, religion. It's just like all of a sudden I became a dharmi, you see. Now I like the Dharma because that's not being impeded by religion. All right, well, taken to be various ashramas by the four castes. We've studied the four castes before, the Brahmin priest and the warrior and worker and so forth. So basically, those people who are really into caste think that that's the Atman. This is what he's saying. So, it's like this is more in a negative way. He's bringing this out. It's not that any of these things are negative. You can be a part of a caste, but you shouldn't limit your Atman to the caste, right? You can be moral or immoral, and you should make sure that you understand that the Atman is not either of that, because then if you can get out of your religion, you can get out of sin, and then you can make yourself better and be moral. So all of this is just taken in that sense, how Gaudapada is presenting it. It's taken to be prana by the metaphysicians. We've already mentioned that. It's taken to be 5 elements by earthbound souls. That's, of course, way down here. We're talking about materialism and sensualism. It's like saying, oh, God is all this, right? So they go out and they just enjoy nature. So they don't know Brahman beyond nature and probably don't have a relationship with Ishvara yet, who's also beyond nature and also master of nature, Purusha over Prakriti again. But they'll go out there and they'll just engage in that as if it were God. They'll throw themselves into nature as if it were God, and then they'll start making little gods there in nature to worship. You see, could be a big problem someday. Taken to be the 3 gunas by knowers of the gunas. You see, so what about Turiya, or what about Trigunatita? Did you ever assign the Atman to that level, that it's beyond tamas, rajas, and sattva? Because some beings have realized that. So these beings who have realized that are knowers of the Atman. You're a knower of the 3 gunas. Did you ever consult the beings who are knowers of the Atman so that they could tell you about the 3 gunas? Shankara did. He defeated all the Samkhya yogis of his time who were so into the 3 gunas as being the ultimate truth. And he just taught them a new philosophy, you see, and said, no, Advaita Vedanta will explain to you how Brahman, Atman, Shakti, yourself are beyond the 3 gunas. Why are you assigning the Atman to those? You're limiting yourself in a negative way. Taken to be the many tattvas by the intellectuals. Well, there they all are. We've looked at so many of them. From the Mahat, the mind, all the way down to the element earth are the tattvas. 24 of them according to Samkhya. 90 of them according to the Varaha Upanishad, which we studied some time ago, and 36 according to Shaivism. So basically, they study them so much that they think that they're that. And that must be the Atman there, because that's all I know. So that's myself, you see. It's hard to explain. That might be the best way I've ever said it, actually. It's taken to be creation, sustenance, and dissolution by philosophers. So, here's where that happens. But here's where that doesn't happen anymore. And here's doesn't even think to happen. See, no cycles in the Atman. So how come you're attributing creation, preservation, and destruction to the Atman, which is one with Brahman, up here, which is formless and nameless and timeless, taken to be Vedas by the sacrificers of the priest, taken to be Vedas and sacrifices by the priest class. Yes, we know the limitations of the priest class in all religions. Taken to be dharma and adharma by the virtuous. We just talked about that, virtue and vice. Taken to be mind and intellect by scholars and scientists. That one is a good one for this day and age in America and Europe with our scientists having their heyday with matter and so forth. But um, there are, of course, some scientists and some scholars who are beginning to see beyond matter into the mind. We don't think that matter's the king of the universe anymore, one scientist said. We're beginning to think that the mind is the king of the universe. Drop dead, slap my face. Basically, to hear someone say that, which is an obvious fact to a Samkhya scientist and to a philosopher in India, would just be a revelation. Wow, it all came from the mind. You're one step more, towards the Om. You're one step back towards your home. Om, sweet Om, as we like to say. Taking to be the padas by adherents of phonetics. So get into your study of languages, right? Oh, it's really powerful. It's amazing. It's too multi-sided for anyone to master how the goddess manifests herself in different words, through different words. But if you want to slim it down to one word and find out the whole secret in it, which is intelligence being held by her, then go to India and take up that study yourself. Go to Rishikesh and spend a week talking about it and hearing about it, and then ruminate on it in a sacred atmosphere and come back with your mind remade and your soul cut in the image of the Spirit again. Taken to be physical objects by materialists. Good luck with that one. But like I said, it's so understandable why people would get so much joy out of an object. I mean, an object can be a body or another person's body, but it can also just be a valuable possession that just gives them pleasure and joy and support, makes them feel satisfied for a little while anyway. So it's not like these things are not understandable. It's just that they're not the Atman. If you tasted the Atman, then you would be in a whole different level of your consciousness. And as Sri Ramakrishna said, all the things of the world would seem insipid to you. They would not compare anymore. That object that you coveted is, why did I ever like that kind of idea would come to your mind? Why was I so attached to that? That's why he said in that God blog last week, if a man gets a cashmere shawl, he doesn't like a broadcloth anymore. So he walked out of the room with a broadcloth on every day, going down the street to keep him warm. Coarse cloth. Someone gives him a gift of a cashmere shawl. I'll never kiss that broadcloth again. This is nice, you see. Makes me look nice, feel nice. So that's how the difference between seeing Brahman and coveting the world is explained by an avatar. Taken to be lokas by ancestors, celestials, and seekers of heaven. And of course, by some human beings who know that there are more worlds than this, like heaven. Even human beings fall into that mistake. So the Atman, is in all this, but it is not any of this. Taken to be gods and goddesses by worshippers of gods and goddesses. And that's going to be, an extension to the wheel of samsara. So you have the wheel of samsara is going basically between, animals, humans, and ancestors back to animals, humans. But there's an extension of the wheel of samsara that goes into heaven, lower heavens with your ancestors. And they have to come back to that lower wheel of samsara to be reborn again, to fulfill their desires for the world. But my teachers just say, satiation never comes. There has to be a point when you're going to break that cycle. O snapper of this world's chains. Kandana Bhava Bandhana, they sing in our tradition about Sri Ramakrishna. He snaps the world chains when you meet him. Taken to be gross, subtle, and causal by the cosmologists. Well, I think you understand that now We were just talking about what's gross, what's subtle, and what's causal. And they're probably closer to knowing the truth of the Atman than most of the others. If you know the Adi Daiva Vidya, the sacred wisdom, then you pretty much have a good idea of what's going on here in the realm of form. And then it's just, what about the formless now? Why aren't you assigning the Atman to that? Because you assigned it to the body, right? And the body can never go to heaven. The body can never get realized. The body can never get enlightened. The body, you can't take it with you. So where else can I assign the Atman? Other than that which I identify myself with it. I have to be able to start assigning it to Brahman, assigning it to Ishvara, assigning it to Divine Mother, assigning it to Om, assigning it to the transcendent, which is beyond the causal, the subtle, and the gross. And finally, he says here, taken to be enjoyment of objects and the enjoyment by the worldly. We've already said enough about that one. So to end our class here today and go on to our fourth one next week, Swami Vivekananda can end it for us. He says, and that this Lord we are trying to realize from time without beginning in the objective, and in the attempt throwing up such queer creatures of our fancy, such as man, woman, child, body, mind, earth, sun, moon, stars, world, love, hate, property, wealth, etc., also ghosts, devils, angels, and gods, and God, etc. Such queer features of our fancy. They're all projections of the mind. Even God is a projection of our mind. Until we become one with it and know it to be our very self, which is why Gaudapada has talked about the self here. That self am I. I am that self. There can be none other, as Vivekananda said in his beautiful works. So in that way, then, we have, in one fell swoop, taken a big bite out of the Niralamba Upanishad and made our way to the 10th question. And that 10th question is, who is the God of death? So I'm sure you're all going to want to be on hand next week to hear the Rishi answer that one. Very intriguing subject. Or like we say in our tradition, the illusion of death. Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pado Padme Toye Shritva Pranamami Mahor Mahor Pranamami Mahor Mahor. O Ramakrishna, teacher of all, O Sharada, goddess divine, in bosom holding those lotus feet, salutations to both, ever be of mine. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Hari Om